evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking Phillies Sports with Matty B program here on the edge of Phillies sports. It is your boy Matty B, or AKA Matt Benarchek. It's Tuesday, April the 4th, 2023. It's 9 o'clock. You're watching EOP, and that is once again you and me, and that would not have it any other way. Thanks for coming back and being back with me for another rousing week of Philadelphia sports talk here on the premier sports venom show in the northeastern sector of or I guess it's the southeastern sector of the northeastern part of the United States of America. It is an honor and a privilege, as I say every week, and I mean that, and the bottom of my heart, every week, it is an honor and a privilege to come back at you and talk with you. And as I said every other week as well, there is never a shortage of what to talk about. And boy, do we got some things to kind of get into tonight as our Philadelphia Sports Week is ongoing or kind of just unfolding here. The Phillies, the Phillies are involved in an interesting series with the New York Yankees right now. They're playing as we speak, and I believe they're still up 4-0, which is a pleasant surprise to see. Despite on how this season has started for this team, we'll get into some Phillies talk and panic button and all that because I have the dual pleasure of being also involved in the Fightins Final, a great post game show. So I have my fill of Phillies every season, and I'm going to give you my my take on things thus far. The Flyers, who are actually in action as we speak as well, are winding down the season. They're losing 1-0 at the end of the first or at the very beginning part of the second period in St. Louis as we speak. We'll talk a little bit, and I mean a little bit. I'm not really going to dwell too much into the Flyers tonight. I'm going to kind of let that sleeping dog lie until we get a little bit closer to the draft or into free agency as well. I know there's a lot of off the ice stuff. Dave Scott retired. There's potential. There's going to be a new head of Comcast, and who that individual will be, and do they give sort of control, maybe to more control to the Flyers? I don't know how that's all going to look, but that's off the ice type stuff. On the ice, the team has played okay. On the ice, they've done decent. We're going to get into a little bit of Flyers talk as well. And then what would it be a week here in the city without me talking football? But again, I'm not going to go to the football that a lot of people else want to go to. I want to talk some Philadelphia Stars as we're about a week away from the beginning of their season, and then maybe sprinkling some Eagles as they get ready for the draft as well. All this and much, much more here on the program tonight on the fine Edge of Philly Sports Network. Let's kind of take a look real quick of what that schedule is or what that network looks like this week. It's Tuesday night. Kelly Green Hour, myself, Chalk Talk, and a little bit later, the Fightins Final, breaking down, hopefully, the Phillies' first win of the season, and then everything else that's to offer here on the network. There's something for everybody. If you don't find it, then you're not looking hard enough. So make sure you're tuned in all the time, every day, because that's basically how we're rolling these days. It's a 24/7 operation here on EOP. But before we get started in on the actual sports talk, well, before we get into the topics, I guess, of the night, let's go with what we talk about every week on this program, and that is this night or this day in Philadelphia sports history. This is a fun little topic or fun little segment that I've been doing for a while now. I enjoy it, and I'm going to keep doing it until someone tells me to stop. So we're going to go way back to 2016 in a night that was very historic and an interesting night for me. And I'm going to explain everything about that this night and back in 2016 and where I was when all this went down. It was the national championship game between the Villanova Wildcats and the North Carolina Tar Heels. If you remember that, this was the night that back in 2016 that the Cats won their second ever national championship in a great basketball game that, guess what, I didn't see. Well, let me rephrase that. I didn't see the second half. So I watched the first half, and then I was sitting on my couch, and of course we all know that Nova was down going into halftime, and I fell asleep. I fell asleep before the second half started. I woke up during the post game. I ain't kidding you. I woke up during the post game show, and it was really discouraging to see that, but yet at the same time, it was great to see the Wildcats won. Of course, I went back and rewatched the second half. The great shot by Chris Jenkins as time expired. Maybe, and a lot of people, I guess, depending on who you talk to, consider that the greatest national championship game that's ever been played. I know last week on the show we did the Duke game in the Final Four, but this game especially if you're a Villanova fan or a Philadelphia basketball fan, with all what it really meant for the Wildcats, in winning their second ever national championship game, an instant classic, a great game to watch. I've rewatched it many times since that night. Of course, 2 years later, Nova would win yet again. This time in a little bit more convincing fashion over Michigan. But this night back in 2016, the Villanova Wildcats, in arguably the greatest NCAA basketball championship game ever played, defeated the North Carolina Tar Heels, thus capturing their second ever school national championship. And there you have it. Your day in Philadelphia sports history, brought to you by the fine folks here at Talk Philly Sports with Matty B, the Edge Philly Sports, and me. So I hope you enjoyed that little factoid. And as I said, I remember that game very, very well, very vividly. Was watching that game, but I was a soldier back then. I was in the Army. I was stationed down in Virginia, and I was tired. 9:30 at night for soldiers, that's late, right? Especially like it was on a Monday night. So I ended up falling asleep at the half, and I woke up during the post game and amazed that Nova was able to pull it off. And then once I saw how they pulled it off, it just made it even more amazing. So a great game that night, and this was then in 2016. So congratulations to the Villanova Wildcats for winning their second ever national championship game, or second ever national championship on this night back in 2016. And now, folks, let's get into the meat and bones of this show. Let's go start off the Phillies, because why? I mean, where else are we going to start off? I mean, it's the number one story in town. The Phillies back on Thursday began their 141st season of operation, and went into a game against the Texas Rangers, or a series against the Texas Rangers, with all kinds of negatives on the line. They were 0-9 against them in their last 9 played. Obviously, the revamped Phillies, coming off the hype of a World Series run, coming off the hype of a Trey Turner pickup, coming off the letdown of the Bryce Harper injury situation, and Reese Hoskins injury situation, came into a game on Thursday, or came into a season with a lot more questions, I think, than a lot of people were ready to admit about this Phillies team. And I said this on the show last week as well, that we seem to forget that this team was an 87-win baseball club in 2022, and that there was a lot of times during the season, I tell you, during the season, where there was really doubt on whether or not they were going to be a postseason team. Obviously, at the end of May, when they fired Girardi, and then even when Rob Thompson, he kind of led them back. They went on this huge, basically winning baseball from June up and through early September, again, kind of hit a roadblock. But there were some moments in the stretch run of last season where we were concerned they weren't going to make the playoffs. So when they did, and everything that did happen in the postseason for them, coming into this season, expectations, hype are off the chains right now, and it should be, because that's the way. One, you get a fan base that hasn't really, let's face it, they haven't really been involved in the 11 years because of the fact that the team has been so bad. But you go in a World Series run and you win some fans over, or you get some fans to come back to your cause. Now, we all know the baseball season is a very long season, and there's going to be some fair weather fans that are in it here in the beginning, and then they're going to kind of drift away as the summer kind of heats up, and potentially, hopefully, come back if there's another postseason run involved. There's the diehard fans that have been here no matter what, and then there's some new diehard fans that are starting to rev up based on what happened last season. So a lot of expectations, a lot of hype, but yet a lot of uncertainty too. I said it on this program. I've said it throughout the offseason. I didn't think they did enough with the bench, and I certainly didn't think they did enough with the rotation, especially dealing with injuries to Ranger Suarez, who starts the season on, I don't know if he's on IL, but he's not in the rotation. And then, of course, the Andrew Painter experiment not working out the way they wanted it to work out. So there was really kind of thin options at that starting rotation. Bailey Falter goes into the number 5 slot, or number 4 slot, and then Matt Strom goes into that number 5 hole. Now, Strom and Falter, I personally thought belonged in the bullpen, and I had them earmarked for the bullpen this year. I was very high on what the Phillies had done with their bullpen in terms of plussing it up, bringing in some pieces: Greg Soto, Craig Kimbrell, Matt Strom. I thought they did outstanding to add to what was already here. But now you're in a situation, because of injury, that you're taking 2 of your bullpen pieces, in my opinion, out of the bullpen and putting them in the rotation. So you just made the bullpen weaker. Now, did you strengthen the starting rotation? Maybe, maybe not. Now, tonight, Matt Strom has pitched well up to this point. Yesterday or 2 nights ago, Bailey Falter pitched pretty well in a losing effort. So potentially, maybe you did. Still lost, but you made the bullpen thinner. You potentially made the rotation decent, but in the long run, probably not that good, right? I was also not a big fan of what they did with their bench. I thought the additions of Jake Cave and Josh Harrison, essentially, that's what your bench upgrade of 2023 is just not enough. And it's not going to be enough. They added some, they picked up Christian Pache, who was a move right towards the beginning of the season from the Oakland A's, and of course, we already got him headed back to Lehigh as he had his auspicious and MLB debut on Saturday. Didn't work out well for the young man. So the bench situation with the Phillies, I was never high on. I didn't think they did nearly enough to address that. Then you factor in the injury to Hoskins, and you also factor in the injury to Bryce Harper starts season. So the bench was never, in my opinion, properly addressed heading into this season. And again, well documented on this program. I've said it before. And now all these things consistently kind of reared their ugly head. Game one, you had Jake DeGrom against Aaron Nola in a game that you never really expected it to be 11-7, but it was. Both pitchers did not escape the fourth inning. DeGrom got touched for 5 runs by the Phillies through 4 innings. 5 runs the Phillies got off Jake DeGrom. You would think, and if I was to tell you this if I was to tell you the results of game one of that series in pieces and say, you know what, the Phillies were up 5-0 off the Grom, you would think, Jesus Christ, this game's over. They won. Yeah, well, you would think that. But in the bottom of the fourth inning, the Phillies, Aaron Nola and bullpen coughed up 9 runs. And maybe one of the most disheartening half of innings of baseball I've ever seen in my life. They were down 9-4, and they went on to lose the game 11-7. Now, there were some offensive pluses out of that game. Alec Boehm had himself a game, literally one hit shy or was it a triple shy of the cycle? Nick Castellanos had a very upbeat start to his season in that game. So there were some offensive pluses to pull out of the first game of the season, but the poor pitching performance by Aaron Nola and the bullpen highlighted or kind of overshadowed everything as the Phillies fell 11-7. And then in the second game of the series, I want to get into all the kind of arguments that are circling about game 2 of this series. And I've never heard so much crap about a situation in a 16-3 game than I've heard with this one. But on Saturday, it just wasn't to be done for the Phillies. Zach Wheeler was shaky at best through first couple innings. The Rangers were kind of dinking and dunking on them. They were up 4-0, and the Phillies came back to make it 4-3. But then the kind of the oars came out of the water, the boat came onto the shore, whatever. It just went really downhill for the Phillies. They ended up losing that game 16-3. The bullpen was knocked around yet again. It was just Junior Marte, which is the Phillies pickup from the 49ers, the Giants, really kind of highlighted the Phillies bullpen ineffectiveness over the weekend and into yesterday as well. Probably he won't be here much longer either. Phillies lose 16-3, but yet the main story coming out of that game was C.B. Buckner, the umpire, and how he was calling games or calling things, by his report card decisively towards the Rangers' favor. And you know what? I did see his report card. I did watch his performance. It wasn't the greatest. I'll give you that. They keep harking back to the Brandon Marsh strikeout that was allegedly 6 inches off the plate. It was not 6 inches off the plate, folks. It was a lot closer than that. And in real time, real speed, Buckner might have saw a strike. I'm going to give Buckner the benefit of the doubt. You know why? Because umpires are part of the game. Umpires are the human factor of this game. And I've never seen an umpire, even Angel Hernandez, call that bad. I mean, that I've seen some bad calls. So don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying that there isn't. But I've never, ever in my life have heard such accusations that the umpire was cheating. Like this is the WWF or something, and we have the bad judge. No, I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. Did he have a great game? He did not have a great game. But did you think the CD Buckner was the reason why the Phillies lost 16-3? He wasn't. So guess what? That shouldn't be a story. But yet it is. It's the story without being the story here in town, because some Philly fans and some writers, and there's some real knucklehead writers out there, that so-called experts that cover this team, want to say that, oh well, without the pitch calm, the pitch timer, CD Buckner all kind of lent their way into the fact that the Phillies got blown out 16-3. No, it did not. The Phillies got blown out 16-3 because they were not prepared to play baseball. And CB Buckner, in his infinite wisdom, did not have a great game. I'll give you that. But you know what? He's an umpire. He's a human being. It's part of the game. I am not in favor of robo ump at all because it's trying to create perfection where perfection cannot be created, folks. What are we doing to this game right now? We're creating some sort of assembly line factory thing. I don't want robo ump. Give me the umps all day long. I don't care. I'll live with their calls, good or bad. It is part of the goddamn game. Leave the umpires alone. CB Buckner did not have a good game. I will give you that. He'll be held accountable, but he is by no reason and no way the reason the Phillies lost that game 16-3. They lost the game 16-3 is because they couldn't hit the ball and they could not pitch for a second straight game. CB Buckner was not the reason. And then on the rubber match on Sunday, Bailey Falter comes in and kind of stabilizes everything, but then we forget to hit because once again, Rob Thompson goes with a very questionable lineup, highlighted by Christian Pache and Sosa, who's actually had a really good start to his season. The Phillies fall in that game 2-1, thus falling down to 0-3. Then last night, to the trip to the Bronx, they go out and get hammered 8-1. And in Ty Walker's Philly debut, once again, no hitting, just amazingly inept baseball being played by this baseball team to drop themselves to 0-4. And before we continue on a little further down this rabbit hole, through the first 4 games, and I know right now the Phillies are, let me check you right now. I'll give you that update as we speak right now. Right now, the Phillies are winning 4-0, and I hope they hold on. Don't forget, if when that game goes final, stay right here at the Edge of Philly Sports with the Fight is Final, which will take you and recap this entire game for you. But let's kind of cover some stats, shall we, for the Phillies to start the season, the first 4 games. I'm a stat guy. I hate it. It's funny because I hate analytics, but yet I keep stats like nobody's business. So through the first 4 games, the Phillies have been out home run 8-1. So they've given up 8 home runs and they've only hit 1. Okay, pretty poor. In the strikeout department, it's actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Phillies pitchers have struck out 35, and the Phillies have struck out 33. So the Phillies are averaging about 8 1/4 strikeouts a game, and their pitchers are averaging about 8 3/4 strikeouts a game. So that kind of balances itself out. Here's really bad: the walks. Phillies pitching into last night, not accounting for tonight's game, but into last night, had given up 21 walks. 21 walks through 4 games. Last night, they gave up 9 walks in one game. The Philly pitching staff gave up. They've given up 21. The Phillies as a team have worked 7 walks. So the Phillies pitching staff's averaging 5 1/4 walks a game, and the Phillies batters are averaging 1 3/4 walks a game. That's a huge reason why the Phillies are struggling right now. Hits. Phillies are actually coming out of last night's game, only being out hit 44-41 on the season by their opponents. Runners in scoring position. Big stat, it's my favorite one. So far for the season, the Phillies are 9 for 39 with runners in scoring position. Again, this is last night. I'm not tracking tonight yet. That's good for about a 230 batting average. Actually, a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It's not good, but it's a lot better. Phillies have also left 31 runners on base for 7 3/4 on the season, and their opponents have left 27 on base. In the run, listen, this is obviously also where it's really bad. The Phillies are being outscored 37-12 through 4 games. Phillies are averaging 3 runs a game, where their opponents are averaging 9 1/4 runs a game. So the Phillies are not pitching, they're not hitting, and they've had some issues in the field as well. But it's really kind of right there lies at the feet of the pitching staff, in my opinion. The Phillies have had very bad performances from their aces, from the top of the rotation has just not been good. Is it the pitch timer? I don't know. Is it not proper conditioning coming out of spring training? I don't know. Are they still feeling the effects of last season? I don't know the reasons. But I do know that Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler both did not look ready to begin the season last week. Ty Walker looked okay through about an inning or 2, but the best pitching has come from Bailey Falter and Matt Strahm up to this point for the Phillies, and I'm taking into account tonight's game as well. So it's not hard to kind of pinpoint where the Phillies struggles have been. It's been pitching. They've not gotten good starting pitching, and their bullpen has been not good, and their bullpen has been used heavily. They used 6 pitchers on opening day. They used 6 pitchers the second game. I think they used 4 on Sunday, and they used 5 yesterday. Their bullpen is being taxed out early on into this season, and you add all those factors in, and you also look back to the end of last season, folks, because the Phillies are on a personal 7-game losing streak. That's right. Do we remember that? Because we lost games 4, 5, and 6 of the World Series prior to the end of the season, and now we've lost the first 3 or 4 heading into this season. So the Phillies are on, I'm sorry, not a 7. Is it a 7? Yeah, it's a 7-game losing streak that the Phillies are trying to snap dating back to last season. I say that to say all this. The big question around town is: Are we? Am I panicking? Am I concerned? Am I scared? I'm concerned. I am. I'm not panicking. I'm not scared. I'm concerned that this team may not be. And again, I said this last week. They are an 87 win team from a year ago. I thought they did enough to improve themselves, but when you factor in the injuries and you factor in some of the real bad pitching, and this is Nolan Wheeler pitch timer, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know, but you factor all that stuff in, and it adds up to some concerning issues for this team right now as we are 4 games in, or 4.5 or 5, whatever, however we are in the game tonight. I am concerned. Yes. Am I ready to chop down Rob Thompson and then, burn this thing to the ground? No, because that's, first of all, it's not going to happen. They're too deep in the money pockets of some of these players. They're going to have to continue to try to be better. I think they will be better. And I hate to say this, but their schedule does get better heading into this coming weekend, and then for the rest of the month and until really the end of the month. So they do have an opportunity to kind of pull themselves out of it. Tonight is huge for them. If they can find a way to get a win tonight, and then hopefully somehow, some way tomorrow, get a win against Garrett Cole, as Aaron Nola will be back on the mound tomorrow. But if they can find a way to eke out 2 wins here and get 2 wins coming out of the Bronx, go home 2-4, kind of put some of those bad feelings behind us, that would go a huge way for this team's and this city psyche and their confidence. And I think the final the other night with Al was, what are the that this team comes home on Thursday for their home opener against Cincinnati to get their NL championship rings and to raise up that NL championship flag as an 0-6 ball club. And that's scary. That's and it does have a chance to happen. It still does, as the Phillies have not won yet, but more than likely it won't, and thankfully that it won't. And I would like them to come back 2-4, especially if you can find a way to take 2 out of 3 from the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. Go a long way to erasing some of these early season troubles that this team has had, or early concerns that the fan base has. But the pinpoint where it's gone wrong, obviously they're not hitting. Certain members of this team are not hitting. Kyle Schwarber, who just hit his first home run tonight, by the way. When you're being out hit home run, the 8th of 1 through 4 games for a team that was predicated on power, obviously that's what they are. It's a little concerning, right? But it really kind of nestles heavily with me with the pitching. We just haven't gotten good pitching from the starters, and we've had atrocious pitching and too much use of the bullpen through 4 games. You had Josh Harrison pitching the other night in Houston to try to save the bullpen because of all the damage done to it, and that's just too much. And you can't necessarily undo that, because these are innings that are going to count. These are innings that are going to add up. And I know it's baseball in 2023 and not 1993, and I get all that. And you don't expect to have a pitcher last more than 6 innings at times and 7 at the most. I understand that, but you got to do anything you can to try to save your bullpen. You got to, and the Phillies haven't done that, and they've gotten some bad pitching from their bullpen, just atrocious. As I mentioned, Junior Marte. Why is he in the Why is he in the bullpen? Now he's in the bullpen because Bailey Falter and Matt Strom are in the starting rotation. That's why he's there, because the Phillies had to go into their bullpen to backfill the rotation, because the plans that they had for certain players, Andrew Painter, didn't work. Ranger Suarez got dinged up. There was no pitching addressed in the free agent market by the Phillies in 2023. There were no other answers but from the bullpen. So it's not hard to figure out where we're robbing Peter to pay Paul here. And it obviously has not worked out for this team up to this point. But it's only 4 games in. Everybody keeps prefacing that. What is some of the things I heard? The Yankees in 98 started out 1-4. They, of course, won the World Series in 98. The 2021 Atlanta Braves started the season out 0-4. And of course, they won the World Series in 2021. So um, hope is still there, of course. Only 4 games in. I get all that. But you never do yourself a favor by putting yourself in an early season hole, which the Phillies have kind of done. But you just got to hopefully every night they can battle their way out of it. And as of right now, they are winning 4-0 in the Bronx. So after that game, please make sure you move on over to um, what's that? The Titans final with Pat Bernard, I believe, hosting again tonight, as he will break this game down for you and everything else that's going on around Major League Baseball on this fine Tuesday evening. That is my Phillies rant, folks. Let's transition now to my Flyers. You know, I've kind of stayed away from the Flyers, figuratively and literally over the last couple of weeks. The Clear the Ice, the Flyers post game show that we do here on EOP has finished for the season. We're not doing any more post game shows, but we are writing articles and we will continue to do that until the end of the season. But it's been, kind of nice to not necessarily have to watch Flyers hockey anymore. And I really never thought I'd actually hear myself say that, but it was so at times painful to watch them this year and to keep watching them in games where, even though most times they were down and they came back and made a game of it, but there were long stretches through a lot of long games that it was just so pitifully painful to watch the way this team played and the way they were treated by other teams. But listen, I think when it's all said and done with, and the smoke clears, I think you got to look at a lot of positives that occurred this year. You're not going to the playoffs. We get that. We weren't going to win a Stanley Cup. We get that. But they've done some things that were long overdue. And they fired Chuck Fletcher. They hired a coach in John Tortorella, who I believe is the answer, and that they allow him to do what he has to do, and if they allow him a hand and a voice in building this team for the future, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised of the result. Because Tortorella does win. He wins wherever he goes. He doesn't have a very long shelf life once he gets that winning product together, but he does win. And I think that that's what's going to happen for this team if they let John Tortorella do what John Tortorella wants to do with his hockey team. And I think that there's some things that have been found out about this team. We found out we do have a bunch of young players, good young players that we can build around. Now, of course, we don't have the centerpiece, and we need centerpieces in this league to win. Jean Couturier is not a centerpiece. Cam Atkinson's not a centerpiece. They are also part of those role players. And they will join a list, of course, of a lot of players, veteran players on this team that will be I expect to be very heavily shopped this offseason in trades. I would not be surprised, folks. I would not be surprised if this team comes into next season with none of these veterans here. I wouldn't be surprised if TK gets dealt. Wouldn't be surprised if Provorov gets dealt. Wouldn't be surprised if Atkinson, Couturier, Hart. I would not be surprised right now that any of them get dealt, because right now, whoever the GM is, remember this, folks, whoever the new GM is, has no ties to any of these guys. None. Because they're not his guys. Even Danny Briere doesn't really have ties to any of these guys. He didn't bring any of these guys here. This was all Chuck Fletcher, Ron Hextall stuff. The new GM is operating completely on unbiased thinking, and he has no emotional ties to any of these players. So that's not a good thing. Well, maybe it is a good thing if you're looking to get moved, but that is an X factor in this summer for the Philadelphia Flyers and these players. There is no emotional ties for the new GM, whether it be Briere or somebody else, of these players. It's just none of that exists. These players are not his guys. So I expect a very active summer, and I would not be surprised if by the end of it, we are a completely different looking team. Now, whether or not that translates to more wins next season, I don't know. I think that it'll translate to a whole nother chapter in Flyers hockey, and a chapter that I'm looking forward to seeing, because even though this season was not good, and obviously we lost a lot of hockey games and we're not well respected, and things are definitely at a very fever pitch here when it comes to this team. Our voices were heard. They fired the GM. Dave Scott resigned, or he retired, or whatever he's calling it. And now we've gotten our wish. We've gotten rid of some of the meddlers. Now, whether or not the old heads, the Hexwells, the Holmgrens, the Clarks, the Bill Barbers, what their role is still with this team in terms of what they do, I don't know, and I don't know what that role will be going forward. But I think our voices were heard, and I think they heard us, and I think they've capitulated and understand. And obviously, we hit them where it hurt the most, and that was in the wallet. That place was empty all season long. So I think it boils down to that. Now they're going to make the changes that we want to be made. And again, do not be surprised that if this hockey team is not like 100% different next season, there are no ties. The new GM has absolutely no emotional ties to any of these players because they're not his guys. So keep an eye on that. And as the season mercifully comes to an end, please check out the Flyers, because if you're a hockey guy like me, it doesn't really matter, I guess, at the end of the day, what's going on, as long as you're watching hockey. And here in a few games, at least we're not going to have any hockey to watch until next season, and that's a bleak concept, man. I hate that. I won't watch the NHL playoffs. I ain't gonna lie to you, I won't if the Flyers are not involved. I'm just not going to watch it, and because I'll be transitioned fully into baseball at this point. But I'll be, the clock is ticking to when hockey season starts again because it's my favorite time of the year. Or I guess my second favorite sport. So Flyers mercifully coming to an end. New day is dawning. New GM, new owner, everything is dawning. Hopefully, that's what we'll be seeing here very soon into the very near future. The Connor Bernard race is on. Obviously, don't think the Flyers are going to finish in the top standings of that race, but that was pretty fun. So there's my Flyers rant. Now, my final rant, I'm going to end it here, is on spring football. Again, I mentioned it last week, and I had the privilege of covering the Stars for the EOP network. And now I'm going to have the opportunity for year 2 of the reboot at USFL. Of course, this is overall year 5 of the USFL. And of course, again, I have to mention this, that heading into this season, the Philadelphia Stars have been represented in every single USFL championship game ever played. That's right. That's 83, 84, 85, and 2022. So hopefully they keep that streak going into 2023. Case Cookus is back. Some of the old good players that the Stars had last year will be returning. Their seasons will be, all their home games will be played in Detroit. They're going to be, that's their hub city this year. Year 2 of the reboot is on pace to start on April 15th. The Stars will kick off against, I believe, the Showboats, who are re-entering the league after a hiatus. They were not there last year, but they were part of the 84 season in the USFL. So they are an old OG USFL team, the Memphis Showboats. Now the Tampa Bay Bandits, they folded. So it's a 1-for-1 there. It is what it is. I got it. I understand what spring football is, but I just love the Stars, and I love everything what they represent. And I love everything of the nostalgic they bring back in my memory. Because back when I was a kid, back in the 80s, and I've said this on this program before too, Eagles football wasn't really all that good here in Philadelphia. It sucked. And there was a time where the Stars were actually better than the Philadelphia Eagles. And we called for it. Fans wanted to see the Stars versus the Eagles once and for all to determine who was a better football team. But the Eagles would never agree to do it. Now, I don't know if it was, collective bargaining stuff and players union. I don't know, or maybe just a sense of pride that they don't want to get beat by a USFL team. Because I honestly think the Stars would have beat them because the Eagles sucked. So the Stars really kind of carved out a place in my heart then. And the fact that they were winning championship games, I mean, that doesn't really go any further than me to have to say that. So they are going to be back at it next year. They fell short in 2022 in the championship game, but here is to the Philadelphia Stars in 2023. Make sure you're checking them out. They're on Fox, and make sure you're checking out here on EOP because I'll be covering them for the network for my second year as well. Looking very much forward to doing that. And know what else I'm looking forward to doing is seeing everything that Philly Sports Trips has to offer. Yesterday, of course, they did their trip up to the Yankee Stadium. I heard there were Eagles chants breaking out in April in Yankee Stadium. I wonder if that's the earliest on record Eagles chants ever recorded at a Phillies game. But they had their trip up to Yankee Stadium yesterday. Their next on the docket is that trip down to KC for the draft on the weekend of April 27th through the 30th. And then you got the Philadelphia Union, the Philadelphia Union Phillies twofer to Denver on May 13th to the 16th, and then the big one, London and Leeds with the Union on Memorial Day week, May 24th and May 30th. Make sure you're checking out make sure you're visiting www.phillysportstrips.com and checking out everything that they got to offer, because that is just, this right here is just a minute amount of what they got to offer. And definitely make sure you're checking these guys out. Sherry's Ticket Town, family owned and operated since 1946. www.sherrystickets.com. Make sure, for those hard to find sports, concerts, and theater venue seats, great prices, no hidden fees. Save an additional 10% when you enter the promo code EOP10. That is Sherry's Ticket Town at www.sherrystickets.com. What are you waiting for? And also, if you're in any kind of legal bind, if you're wondering about some workman's compensation questions or comments or concerns, if you're wondering about motor vehicle accident issues, or if you're involved in a personal injury battle, or if you're faced with criminal law implications, what are you waiting for? Why have not you called Dave Cherry at 610-565-0300? Dave will do his very best for you. So make sure you're calling Dave Cherry right now if you're dealing with any one of these four issues at 610-565-0300. Tell him that Matty B, Talk Philly Sports with Matty B, and the EOP sent you, and he will take great care of you, as will PJ and the rest of the crew at Dolan's down there in the heart of Delco and Ridley Park. The only bar in Delco for Quizzo music and great times and memorabilia giveaways. And you never know who's going to walk through that door. Visit Dolan. Visit Dolan's in Ridley Park today. Folks, I'm not going to talk Eagles tonight. I'm gonna leave it be. I just don't have the strength. I don't have the strength to validate my point of view on Howie Roseman. I really don't. But I am going to sign off, though, with a little bit of a personal thing, right? So here's the deal. Don't make excuses for why things are happening, okay? Phillies are not winning baseball games. They haven't played good baseball. Simple as that. And there's no other reason to go deeper to it. To blame CB Buckner, to blame the umpires, to blame the pitch timer. By the way, it's a timer, folks. Okay, let me be very clear on that. There are no clocks in baseball. There has never been a clock in baseball, and there never will be a clock in baseball. It's a pitch timer. So let's get that out of the way. The pitch timer is the way of the future. It is what it is. I don't. My verdict is out right now on it. But I'm not ever going to blame the umpires, nor am I going to blame the refs for blowing the Super Bowl against the Eagles, because the refs did not blow the Super Bowl. It was a penalty. It should have been called. I don't want to hear, well, it wasn't that much of a penalty. Yeah, it was a penalty. It should have been called. CB Buckner did not have a good game the other day. I understand that. But he has nothing to do with why they lost that game. So all you Monday morning quarterbacks out there that want to sit there and say, well, I don't blame the umpire, but give me a break. You're blaming the umpire. Stop it. Stop it. It's part of the game. You play the game and you accept the facts. You accept all the factors. And sometimes they mess up. Sometimes they don't make the right calls that go in your way. Sometimes they make the wrong calls that go in your way. Get over yourselves, all right? And that's just the bottom line for me. That's being a man. It's being an adult. Don't cry and moan about the umpires. Because you know what? I think the umpires are pretty damn good. And without them, we wouldn't have baseball. So, folks, that is going to do it for me. Until next time we talk, what do they say? That is the news, and I'm out of here.